Here at Electrify Expo 2024 here in Orlando, and we're lucky enough to be greeted with the Rivian R2. Of course, the new recently announced Rivian, which comes at a much more affordable price, but doesn't sacrifice on some of the features you may be used to in a Rivian. Of course, the Rivian R2 just announced at $45,000 starting price and something like 300 miles, although they have not yet specified which trim levels will get 300, which might maybe get slightly under that, but at $45,000 starting price, this car right here is guaranteed to be a home run, and let me show you why. When we walk around this car, what you're going to notice, it's hard to tell on camera, but definitely in person, the footprint of this car is very, very similar to the Model Y. The biggest difference you'll notice is the ride height. So this thing sits taller, and of course, instead of that traditional Tesla teardrop shape in the back, it comes completely straight back, much like the R1 series. By doing this, of course, it's less aerodynamic, but Rivian doesn't seem to be afraid of that because they've just put a larger battery pack in here to still give you a really good range at just over 300 miles. Make sure to check out Rivian's website because right now the R2 is doing somewhat of a tour around the country, and I know that down in Austin they actually had one driving around. This vehicle right here is not that same one, so these are starting to pop up in very few quantity, but you can at least get a first-hand look at this vehicle. And in this case, they've actually got the doors open, and the only rules are don't touch the car. So you're allowed to stick your hand in there. We were able to get some really good footage inside of the vehicle by extending an arm in there. But here's what I've noticed the most, and we're gonna have to look at the back seat to show you what I'm talking about. Now, you may recall I said it's basically the size of a Tesla Model Y, and it's very close. It's within a couple inches. But where they put those inches is very different than the Model Y. And you'll notice it right away, even just looking on film. The back seat is actually pretty big. So they've actually set the back seat rear compared to what the Model Y is, giving you a little bit more leg room. And then also, if you look in the front seats, again, because of the shape of the vehicle, you actually have quite a bit of leg room up here too. And where the dash is sitting, there's quite a bit of vertical space also. You also have the traditional Rivian center console, although it does not have the dual door system. And it does appear to have a speaker underneath it, which I was able to stick my hand in there far enough. And then of course, the awesome 2 glove box system, which I absolutely love that Rivian took something people complained about and doubled down on it all for a gag. Of course, you know that there is a flashlight on the driver's side, but over here, there's actually a hand warmer, and this thing is a rechargeable hand warmer, and they've actually got one here on this prototype, which is pretty cool. But what you can see by looking at this car, of course, at under $100,000 or about half the price of the R1S, you're not going to get exactly the same level of materials, and you can see what they're calling their more affordable interior, which looks much, much better in person than it did online. So that's encouraging. But until you see this in person, you're not gonna really be able to tell what I'm talking about, even on camera here. But I can't touch it, and I won't, but it is a lot better than it looks online, I promise you. Quite possibly the best feature of this car, though, is one that my pup, Murphy, is gonna love also, and that is the rear window opens. Not only does this rear window open, of course, this prototype doesn't do it, it appears, but these side windows actually vent also. Both the rear windows, they did a demonstration during the release, so you get a nice airflow back here. But if you don't have a pup, not to worry, this is actually really convenient for getting items in and out without having to open the whole tailgate. And it is a traditional tailgate. It opens all the way up, not in 2 pieces, but this window is really nice, and I'm in love with that. But also, while we're back here, the other thing I want to show you is the way that the seats are done is very much the same as the R1S, except it does not recline, but you do have the 40-20-40 split there. And I'm assuming that middle seat, when you pop that forward, the bar will actuate into the seat next to it like it does in the R1S. At least I would think so, but it does not recline. So the angle of the seats that you saw is what you're gonna get. There's no flexibility in that. Of course, we now have NACS enabled in the vehicle native, which is fantastic. Of course, we're still waiting to find out if the production version is going to have this on the passenger side. Now, a lot of people are asking, why would they do that? Because this is the wrong side for Tesla supercharging network. Well, it's because their Rivian Adventure Network needs to be on this side. That's why it went from the front driver's side to the rear passenger side. So more to come on that if Rivian's gonna budge on this at all. It does not appear that they are at this time though. Even if they decide not to move the NACS port, having it native on this car is a game changer. Having just come back San Diego to Florida in an R1T, I can tell you I only had one stop where I got to use the Magic Dock station for a Tesla supercharger. And the public network is not fun to deal with. This is going to change everything. So I'm down here to show you a couple of things. Of course, with Rivian, we have a more adventure style vehicle that's capable of doing a little bit more all-terrain. I would not take this thing to some serious off-roading, but you're going to be able to get to and from a campsite anywhere. It's all thanks to a more rugged tire, a more rugged suspension that's going to help you reach those places. As Rivian says, the adventure seeker, you're going to be able to reach those places with these tires. Now, the downside to that is it definitely offsets your range. So that's something though that Rivian, again, does not seem to be afraid of because they just put a larger battery in these. And speaking of range, I want to talk about the batteries in this. Of course, we have the next generation batteries from Rivian in here of the 4695. Not to be confused with the 4680s from Tesla, but they too are going with a cylindrical structural battery pack, which is the next generation of all electric vehicles at this point. There's a huge cost advantage to doing it this way. And Rivian seems to have partnered with somebody to get these done in a new profile of 4695. So 95 millimeters tall instead of 80 like the new Teslas. So that is definitely going to help with bringing this cost in line with that $45,000 price target. Overall, it still amazes me the space you get in this car for being so much smaller than the R1S. And when you come up to the front, it's a similar situation. It's not quite as deep, maybe dimensionally a slight bit more narrow, but this is a huge front. And it looks like, I won't touch, but it looks like there's even that same sub compartment underneath where you can put your charging cable and all of those things and still have access to the gear you want to grab and go with without disturbing that. Of course, that all goes back to the shape of this car being this box style. It's a very popular style in the United States for a long time. And Rivian really came out swinging with the R1 series, going after that rugged design, going after that boxy look, and it has done very well. Of course, price is an issue, and that is where this thing is going to come and fill the gap. Now, if Rivian does what I think they're going to do, based on how they do business today, I think there's going to be 3 packages here, and it's going to be in $5,000 increments. So if the base model is $45,000, the next series is going to be $50,000. And then their performance version is going to be $55,000. These are just my assumptions, not based on anything anybody's told me, but based on what Rivian has done in the past. I think that 45, 50, and 55 are the numbers. And if you look at Tesla's lineup for the Model Y, that is a fantastic price. And you're going to be able to look at this car and the Model Y in the same light because they claim it's going to be tax credit eligible. So that means the Model Y in this R2, if it does deliver what they promise, are going to be the most popular SUVs by far, possibly in the world. Of course, the Model Y was the best-selling car in the entire world, and this thing is aimed right at it. And I think that that's a brilliant move, and Rivian is finally in a place where they can start to build a $45,000 car that's going to way outsell their production. Speaking of production, this is where things are going to get a little bit challenging for Rivian. So they have stopped all work on the Georgia facility, which makes sense. They're pouring all their resources into getting this thing to market. Timeline for that, unfortunately, we're looking at 2 years from now. They did say the beginning of 2026 or the first half of 2026 is what they're expecting, but that's still 2 years away. And a lot can happen in 2 years' time in the automotive industry in electric cars. So hopefully this is still a competitive car in 2 years' time, because as this is right now, this is a no-brainer to consider. Bringing that all full circle now, we have an entire facility that's on hold. Everything that you see here is being developed in Normal, Illinois, and production is probably going to be constrained, certainly at first, meaning if you want one, probably going to be waiting quite some time, even after the first half of 2026. But don't let that deter you. Put your deposit in to get in line for one of these if it is what you're looking for, because this car, I'm telling you right now, is going to be the first car to compete head-to-head in volume with a high-volume Tesla. I think Rivian really knocked it out of the park.